with TrinityPrep not too long ago, but that was face-to-face before we all had to do the shelter in place. And I'm going to turn this on red so my family knows that I am presenting right now. So what we're going to be talking about this evening is schooling in crisis, guides for both teachers and parents, and just some takeaways that we can use from psychology and development and just kind of best practices. So the general overview for tonight is we're going to talk about what predicts success, how it is that we can set our kids up to be successful, not just through this year, but in life in general, because I think when we're thinking about schooling in crisis, keeping that filter in mind is really important. I think it's easy for us to get caught into trying to follow curriculums and things and without remembering why we are doing certain things. We're going to talk about homeschooling versus crisis schooling and understanding that there is a difference between the two and what that looks like, because surprise, we are not homeschooling right now. We are crisis schooling and trying to figure that out. We're going to go through some different resources for you all, some different tips and tricks, and then at the very end, I have a time for questions and discussion. So something important to keep in mind here is when we are talking about what research says about what predicts success. Curiosity, work ethic, and having a willingness to fail. And also a really big one in there that I should have put in the list is social skills. As long as we have these different assets to our personality, essentially, we can be successful in life. This is why people who don't go to the very best schools and get the very best education can still be incredibly successful. And it's why people who have had every opportunity and great education and things aren't always necessarily successful. So if our goal is to help our kids be successful, the things that we can really focus on during this time is how do we foster their curiosity? How do we get them wanting to know more? How do we get them to engage with anything, not just an academic subject? If they are into, say, Minecraft, we're playing a lot of that in our household these days. You know, how do we engage curiosity around Minecraft? If we're trying to build a certain structure, how do we build it in that way? How can we build that curiosity? And so that we're going to Wikipedia to look things up, we're looking at design plans, we're engaging in other materials and wanting to learn more naturally, that intrinsic, so that motivation coming from inside versus outside to go and explore the world. Work ethic is also, we can call that grit. So that's that desire and that ability to go and just keep working at something and to work really, really hard. Grit actually seems to be the biggest predictor of success that we've been able to find thus far in all of the eons. Psychologists have been trying to understand what makes people successful. We used to think it was intelligence. It's not. We used to think it was self-esteem. It's not. It seems to be that work ethic, that grit, that ability to stick with things and to continue trying. And part of that is being willing to fail. So learning from our failures is incredibly important. So we try something, it doesn't work. We try it again, it doesn't work. People tend to poo-poo a lot on video games and say that they don't teach kids anything. And that last one of being willing to fail and learning from failures is honestly like one of the biggest strengths that we can get from most video games out there. So if you think of a game such as Dark Souls, which I don't know if any of you all are gamers, but that is an incredibly hard game. It is a game that was designed to be deliberately hard for gamers. And you fail a lot in that game. And it teaches you how to come back from that, and your failures teach you. And if you give up after, one or two failures, you're not going to get anywhere. But it is through continually failing that you actually learn and you grow and you can develop. Another really great game that is not as violent as Dark Souls, that also really encourages that learning from failure, is an independent game called Celeste. It's available on Nintendo Switch, PC, and I think Xbox as well. And it's a very cool game. It's so it's a platformer game where you're jumping, and it's about a woman trying to climb a mountain, and you fail and you die a lot. And there's actually a lot of psychology built into that game and talking about failure and how to learn from failures. It says, like, don't look at your death count as all the times you failed, look at it as how much you've learned and how far you've come. And so it's a really cool way of learning how to reframe failure. And if we can do those things, so if during this time where we are out of the normal classroom, we are trying to learn at home, if we can keep in mind every day, how am I helping my kid be curious? How am I building their work ethic, their grit? And how am I teaching them to learn from failure? You're giving your kids the best tools to succeed, hands down, no matter their age. If we can bring these three things into their experience, into their life, and foster those and grow those, they're going to do really well. So I really want you all to keep that in mind because, again, we are not homeschooling. So this is taken from a blog post article from a woman who used to design curriculums for many years and also was a homeschool teacher, and that we need to change our wording around this. We're not homeschooling our kids, we're crisis schooling, because homeschooling is a choice. We sit down as a family, we look at our educational options, and we say, you know, I think for our children, it makes the most sense to keep them home and to have mom or dad school them, or to have them go to online school, to go to a co-op or something. It is a deliberate, intentional choice. What we are doing right now is not deliberate, it is reactive. It is something has been done to us, meaning we have all been asked to shelter in place and not go out. The schools have been closed down, and now we are having to adapt and overcome. And so this is incredibly important because, like, we all do this social comparison thing where we look at how other people are doing it versus how we're doing it. And we recognize, like, okay, maybe we're not, you know, meeting that standard of the Pinterest, you know, homeschool mom. The spoiler is nobody meets that standard. Okay. But, like, you didn't ask to be an online teacher if you're a teacher here. You didn't ask to be a homeschool parent if you're a parent here. This was done to you, and now you are going to do the best you can with the tools you have. And that is good, right? Foster that curiosity, foster that work ethic, foster that ability to learn from failure, and you're going to do okay. Okay. So again, we are crisis schooling. We're just trying to keep them up and make sure they don't completely atrophy the skills that they've gotten. So again, you're not going to be able to recreate the learning experience perfectly, and that's okay. We want to focus on the fundamentals of learning. So this is more geared towards the teachers in the room here than the parents, but to think about the subject that you're teaching. And if we can boil that down to, like, the thesis statement of why is this class important? Why is this subject important? Can we get that and then make sure that we're teaching that fundamental thesis statement of the class in the way that we're presenting? So for example, I think of science classes. A lot of times it's, I want to teach the scientific method, and maybe a bonus is how to think about the world critically, right? And now that's sort of the value, that's the core of the class. And then all the lesson plans and the essays and the projects all build upon that core. And so one of the things I think we can do in crisis is we focus on the what's. We focus on, okay, there was this big project that they were going to have to do. We got to make sure that they do the project. When really the project doesn't matter as much as the core. And so if we can look at the why are they taking this class? What is the purpose of this class? What higher function is it serving for us? That can really help us kind of drill down and go, what's important here? What do I want the kids to be able to do? What do I want them to have at the end of this year to feel like this has been a successful year for them, to feel like they've really gotten what they need out of this class? Because, you know, I don't think anyone in here is a college or, you know, graduate or doctoral professor right now. Everything we're going to learn, we're going to relearn at some point at this level of education, right? If you got a kid in your AP bio class and they want to go on and study biology in college, guess what? They're going to take this stuff again. It's okay if you don't cover everything. If you can get to that core message that you want to have in your class, they're going to be successful again. So some things that I think we really need to focus on like, what are the important parts of learning, right? Reading comprehension. We want, successful humans can read something and understand what they've read. I'm putting the critical thinking up in there very close to the top because that one's near and dear to my heart. I see so many people who don't think critically about what they need to do and what's going on. Thinking about applied mathematics. And then also thinking about like the scientific method and understanding how to engage in things, how to do experiments in the world. My kids, they've been playing outside in the dirt a lot. And so they took a bath the other night and the bath got dirty. And they're like, wow, the water's so dirty. They were really dirty. And they were dumping the water out and they're like, wait, but it still looks clear when we pour it. And then that led to a little bath time experiment. And so again, that fostering that curiosity, that questioning, thinking, how can I build in these things in small ways that don't feel like learning? And then also we cannot forget the creativity piece of all of this. Art, music, dance. How do we foster creativity in our kids and have them continue to do those things so that they can enjoy and thrive during this time? Something else to remember here is that being social is incredibly important. So that is another form of success, is learning how to socialize and socialize well with others, to connect and to have those relationships. I really like this image that I found because it kind of fits how we have to socialize right now. And so let's talk about this kind of challenge that we have, which is technology is a way to safely keep in contact. So our kids are going to be on technology a lot more than we would expect, a lot more than we're used to. And so what are the reasonable expectations for that? How much time do we want them to be on these applications? What we had for expectations of technology time and screen time while they're in school and in their usual routine probably are not going to work right now. That it's one thing to say, like, I don't want you, FaceTiming your friends. I want you to go hang out with your friends. They can't right now. Safely, we cannot have kids hanging out with each other. Some of the research is coming out and is showing that kids seem to be the super carriers of this virus because they're not getting sick, they're asymptomatic, so they continue to move about and spread it. So we want to make sure that we're doing our part to, flatten out the curve and keep people home. But we also want our kids to have that social experience. We don't want them to lose the connections with their friendships. The cool thing is we have this kind of technology and it is completely widely available. 15 years ago, if something like this had happened, most kids would have been incredibly socially isolated without seeing their friends, without being able to talk to their friends outside of phone calls. And it really would have been a different story. But now pretty much everybody has a smartphone or two in the household, or computers with, great webcams and microphones, and they can have these conversations. And so there is a way for kids to continue to connect. And there's a lot of them. So this is the list that I could think of all the different applications that kids might be using to keep in contact with one another. I had my teenager check this for me to see if I missed any, and he said he didn't see any. That there were some on there that used to be used, but nobody uses them anymore, so they're not on there. I put this list up so you all can know what your kids might be using, and not to vilify or write off any of these. It's just more, look at this and understand that this is how they're going to need to connect. And so become familiar with those different platforms. Set up reasonable expectations. It's good to keep your kids on a schedule if you can. It doesn't have to be as strict as when they're in school. Like, my teen goes to CMS, and so CMS schools start at 7:15 in the morning. But now that they moved to online, they don't actually have to check in until 8:30 in the morning. So he's sleeping in. And I'm totally fine with that because I didn't like him getting up that early, right? But, there is still a reasonable bedtime so that he's getting enough sleep and that he's not on this stuff all day. But I don't mind him being on, Discord or Snap or Instagram to talk to his friends. It's how we're staying connected. It's how we feel that we are getting that interaction with other people. And so we really want to make sure that they are getting that time and figuring out how to connect in a way that's meaningful for them. Um, there is oh gosh, in my technology talk, I recommended this website and I should have written it down for this one. I think it's Common Sense Media is one that has some pretty good breakdowns of just the different platforms and kind of a quick, like what you need to know about them, the risks and the benefits. And again, just keep in mind, to completely ban your kids from all of this stuff is really limiting them socially. And so we want to make sure that they're still getting some social interactions, and talking about, etiquette with communication, digital communication, how we initiate conversations, what that can look like, all of those kinds of things. So some educational resources that I want to point out to you all. This is some stuff that I really enjoy. Curiosity Stream is a streaming service that offers documentaries. I just actually subscribe to it myself to give my kids some more documentaries and things that they can watch. And it's only $1 a month. So really nice. There's some really cool documentaries on there. The reason I got it is with thinking about curiosity and self-driven learning. One of the things I was really thinking about was, as a child myself, like what were some of the things that got me curious about the world? And the thing I came back to a lot was animal documentaries. And so they have a whole great section on different animal documentaries on there. And so that was why I got that. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I just like the program. YouTube can be great, but it also can be terrible. And kind of knowing like what are good educational programs versus bad ones on YouTube can be challenging for some people. So Nebula is a streaming platform. It is subscription based as well, but all of the creators on there are educational YouTubers. I believe it is an invite only platform. And so the content you're going to get on there, it's fun, it's creative, but it is also all educational and education based. The Charlotte Mecklenburg Library has a ton of amazing digital books available, and they are doing some other programs and things as well to help people connect and get other learning materials and library materials. So you can get videos, you can get audiobooks, you can get printed books through the library. So please check that out. Also, Audible is offering a lot of free audiobooks in response to COVID-19, which is amazing. Listening to books counts, okay? If your kids have not read Harry Potter, I highly suggest get the audiobook version of the Harry Potter books. Jim Dale, who narrates them, is amazing. They're really well-written books. They're fun to listen to, and it can be really interesting as well. There's a lot of other educational resources out there, of course, like TED Talks. NASA has some great websites and things. There's just all kinds of great material out there. So go look and find what works. And again, like, you want to be pulling in your child's special interests. So that'll bring me to talking about general tips. One of the things too is this time can be a great time for you to teach your kids stuff that they're not going to learn in school. You know, those things we sit around the dinner table going, I wish in school they had taught me this, or I wish in school they had taught me this life skill that I need now as an adult. This is a great time to teach that stuff, right? We got tax season coming up. Teach your kids how to do taxes. That can be their math lesson for a little while, right? Teach them how to change a tire. Teach them how housekeeping works, how, meal planning works, cooking, all of that kind of stuff. This is a really great time because we tend to be too busy in our lives. We really tend to cram in as much as we can to every day. It's let's go to this game, let's go to this activity, let's go to this enrichment program, let's go to school 10 hours a day, and then we're going to have work meetings afterwards and all of this stuff. And while that's great, it just doesn't leave a lot of time for the other stuff. And so sometimes we are sending our kids off to college and they don't know how to do laundry, which is a big problem. So this is a great time to learn how to do laundry. It's not exciting, it's not sexy, but we all need to do it, right? Um, it's also a really wonderful gift and a time for us to connect as a family. You know, play board games together. I'm a humongous, anybody who follows me on social media or you've seen other things I do, you know, I'm a board game geek. I love board games. I love what they can do for families, how they can bring people together. And it's a great time to play board games. I actually was just before dinner playing a board game with my son. Um, so it's a lot of fun, you know, going for walks together. This is a time to just spend time with each other and enjoy each other's company. You know, like, we're social beings, and yes, teenagers do tend to enjoy socializing with their friends more than their family, but that's okay. You know, it's thinking about how, you know, do we bring in that social piece? How do we get those better connections? You know, how do we connect in a more healthy, productive way as a family when we're not so all stressed out by everything? The last tip, and this one can be a little hard for some parents, which is learning to lean into your child's interests to help them with learning. Um, so let's take a few minutes and talk about that. Again, I'm going to go back to those predictors of success. Oops. Curiosity, work ethic, and being willing to fail. We have to be highly motivated from the inside, intrinsically, not from the outside, intrinsic, to do something. If we're being asked to go do something we don't like, it's going to be really, really hard for us to continue to do this and to continue to work on it. And so we tend to give up. We tend to just kind of push through and go on. But if we're really into something, it's easy for us to be curious about it. It's easy for us to engage and have hours and hours and hours pass studying something and working on it and trying to problem solve it. It's easy for us to fail and try again if we're fascinated by it. So, like, if your kid is into Zelda and they're studying physics, cool. Let's talk about the physics of Link's paraglider in Breath of the Wild and how did that work? How much lift would Rivali's Gale need to give him that amount of altitude that he would get on a jump, right? There's ways that we can bring those things into our special interests. We can bring academics, we can bring the other things that we want to learn into special interests. If we can do this and do it well, it's going to help bring that curiosity. It's going to help bring that filter of passion and excitement to kids so that they can see what they want to in the world and learn more from it. Um, if you want some interesting examples on how to do that, there's a couple of YouTube streams I would actually recommend. One of them is called Because Science. It's done by a man called Kyle Hill. He used to work for Nerdist Industries, but now he's on his own with his own YouTube stream called Because Science. But he breaks down like what would Thanos's gauntlet have to actually be made of to be able to handle the power of the Infinity Stones, and goes through the physics of that and what's the tensile strength of Spider-Man's webs since he can swing from them, and what the velocity is he's swinging at, and are his arms being able to hold him up and things. It's cool stuff, and it's a way to pull in special interests into that academic setting and bring those things to a different level for our kids during this time. I think just sort of a final general tip too, a lot of people are going to talk about, you know, the importance of routine and schedule, and that certainly is important too. But we also don't want to be doggedly, you know, working on the schedule. One of my kiddos today kind of had their first meltdown of all of this and missing their friends and feeling out of control in the world. And so like the schedule went out the window today because we needed to take care of the emotions. And we need to understand where people are and what's going on. And like, even though we're home and we're all safe and okay, this isn't okay. Everything that's going on, it's not okay. And it's okay for us to, you know, have our times where we aren't feeling our best, we aren't doing our best, and how to communicate that with our family well in a way that's going to be supportive of them. A few other resources that I want to recommend. So the virusanxiety.com was just pointed out to me today, actually. And it has lots of wonderful resources on there for if you're having stress about cabin fever, if you're trying to explain things to your kids in age appropriate ways, just all kinds of different resources. And it seems like it's dynamic and they're putting new things up there all the time. And it's pretty well organized. So, and it's made by, I think, 3 or 4 either psychologists, psychiatrists, or a combination there. So it seems to be really reliable. TakeThis.org, I always recommend their stuff. They're a wealth of knowledge about psychology and how to ask for help when needed. Their resource tab has this wonderful flow chart of how to ask for help. And they also on there have a breakdown of the different types of helpers that there are out there. Because like I've got a whole slew of letters after my name, but not everybody knows what they mean. And you don't know what type of helper you might need. And so it helps you figure out what type of training you might want in a mental health professional, and how to seek that out. Also, suicide crisis line is on there, the helpline, talk lines, all of those things. It's not unusual or uncommon at this time to need extra help and to reach out for that. So there's just great information on there. HeatherAnnWorld.com is the one where I got that article of that homeschooling is not the same as crisis schooling. I recommend everybody read that because we need to set up accurate expectations for ourselves. Like, our kids are not going to have the same experience as if this hadn't happened. And that's okay. Like, this is a historic time and it's weird and bizarre, and we're all trying to figure it out and do our best. But again, like, as I'm going to wrap up the talk so that we can go into about it, I want to leave plenty of time for questions and discussion, because I think a lot of us also just need time to process and to bounce ideas off of each other. And that's what we've got here. But just remember, we're going to do our best. Foster that curiosity, help foster that work ethic, and teaching how to learn from failure. And you're going to be giving your students and your kids the tools that they need to succeed in life. And with that, I'm going to open it up for questions from all of you. That's all my contact information. If you don't feel comfortable asking a question or talking here, but you still want to reach out to me, please feel free to send me an email. I'm very responsive on email. So, and if I happen to not respond, just shoot me another email, because I do get a lot of them, but I try to respond to everyone that comes in. So with that, we'll open it up.
So I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
My daughter has got pretty severe ADHD, and she has a lot of trouble focusing and a lot of trouble getting motivated.
Yes.
And she is completely demoralized with this remote learning. She cannot seem to make herself start projects. She can't, if she does get started, she can't make herself finish them. We are really, really struggling every day. She's falling farther and farther behind because she is just, and we try to put structure in the day, and she's just resisting help. She wants to try to figure it out herself, but she just, I don't think is capable.
Yeah. So one channel I'll recommend for you and for her is a YouTube channel called How to ADHD. It's wonderful. The woman who runs the channel, she has ADHD, and she talks about her own life and her own lessons learned. I'd be willing to bet you're going to find videos on there that are going to repeat the things that you have said to her. But because they're going to be coming from someone on YouTube, they're going to be believed. I hate that that's true. I can't teach my own kids a lot of things, but that can be a really wonderful resource for her. Is she working like with a therapist or anybody like that as well? If you don't mind me asking that, sorry.
She has been working with a counselor, but she's started to resist that greatly.
Okay.
So she thinks her friends can help her, which is, I guess what teenagers think. But she's extremely creative, and she's done some amazing things for the past 2 weeks, but they don't have anything to do with homework.
Yeah, yeah. And that can be a challenge too, right? Of like, how do we validate this stuff? What grade is she in, if you don't mind me asking?
She's a sophomore.
Sophomore, okay. Again, I would come back to work with her teachers, right? And
Hmm.
again, try to get the teachers to help you just boil down to like, what are the things you want her to get out of her sophomore year? That if she were to get nothing else, as long as she got these skill sets her sophomore year, she'd be okay, right? And we're going to
Okay.
focus on those things.
Okay.
Um, and it might be that we have to work with the teachers to create something. If she has an IEP or anything like that,
Yeah.
this is going to be a
Yeah.
time where we're going to have to creatively lean into IEPs.
Yeah.
Um, because like this environment is not good for kids with ADHD.
No,
Um,
she's highly distractible, and she's really struggling with. She misses the school. She loves the school. She loves the teachers, and she needs the structure of not being at home and being in a classroom, and it's extremely difficult.
yeah. And something else to keep in mind with a lot of this stuff too, and that was the reason I kept bringing up those three core things that we want to look at, is a phrase I heard in the military a lot, which was, is the juice worth the squeeze? Right? Is what we're going to get out of this worth the energy we're putting into it, right? And like, if the cost of her getting all of the worksheets done and work done and homeworks done for her sophomore year is you end it with a terrible relationship where you two are fighting all the time, it's not worth it. It's not. And like, that's, maybe I'm a little weird in how I say this, but like, we need to focus on you two having a good relationship, her feeling safe and like home is a good place for her, and
Hmm.
also trying to find that way of how do we get you to do enough so that you're okay.
Okay.
um, and it's hard, and so it might be having conversations with the teachers and coming up with alternative projects. um, is someone I'm working with, we're talking about that, like, maybe they're really into memes, like, to a phenomenal degree. Is a person I work with who just knows so much about memes, it's amazing. And we're talking like, maybe this is how we do a history report, is let's talk about the history of memes, or how can we understand you know um, the election cycle in the US through memes. And again, that's leaning into the things they're interested in creative ways to kind of foster that curiosity and that engagement in some way.
Oh, and one quick question.
Mhm.
I missed the URL that you had that the guy talks about, like how strong would the tensile, Spider-Man's tensile have to be
Oh, it's called Because Science.
because science.
Yep.
Okay.
It is a phenomenal show. If you're a nerd at all like me, it'll suck you in for over an hour.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Can I say something too?
Yeah.
And I would just encourage you, we're going to be super flexible with every student. And I would, anything that Lizzie has done in the last 2 weeks that has nothing to do with her schoolwork, have her share it with the teachers, and maybe we can make some sort of project creatively out of that. One thing that we're trying to do in all this is, have the academics available, but focus on not just academics. That's why we're doing these community talks. We're going to have one a week until we come back to school. And then even next week, we're going to start one where the kids can get together and talk like we do for assemblies. So we'll
Okay.
be putting that out there where socially they can get together and talk through some of this stuff with a counselor. Then we've also got some social events, some Zoom events. There's going to be one tomorrow that we're getting out there, but they could have watched the movie Goonies, and they're all going to talk about it tomorrow.
Okay.
And a week from now, They're going to have another Zoom party where it's going to be like everyone bring your pet to the Zoom and show your pet off in front of the Zoom. So we're planning a lot of stuff like that, to where we kind of look at it, even when we're not doing the online, it's not all about academics for us. We really take the education as a holistic approach with, the mental health, emotional, social, and academics. So we're trying to incorporate all that, and will in the next week or so. We're getting the word out, where she'll have, because I know with my own son, even just he's isolated himself, and then too when we get on him about doing the work, that doesn't help either. We want you to have a good relationship in the last, after this with Lizzie. She's an amazing and talented person. So
she's created this whole armor thing, this whole Star Wars armor out of massive amounts of craft foam and glue and paint. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So, but and you look at how she puts the pieces together, I go, there's some geometry in there. She just doesn't know she's doing it, but it's, she's quite demoralized, not having the support of being in the classroom. And I know it's hard for her to pay attention in the classroom, but it's extraordinarily hard for her to try to do this at home. So we will share, Doug will share some of the stuff that she's been doing, because it's really very cool, but it just has nothing to do with school.
It's fine. We're okay with that. We're in a crisis here globally, so we understand, and we're going to work with y'all and her. We want her to keep her confidence of what she's gained the whole year and not lose it in the last quarter. That's not worth it for us. So
yeah. Thank you very much.
Some other questions? Imagine there's gotta be some. I think just to address too, for teachers and for everybody, to stress again, it's okay to be not okay. Like, it really is, to have little breakdowns and to have times where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what this is supposed to be like. And just feeling out of control, right? That feeling of I just want to nope out of this. This is terrible for me. I don't want to be here. It's okay. We're all going to have those feelings at times, because this is a global crisis. We know there is no playbook for this, really. And you're all doing phenomenal. It's 7:00, on a Wednesday night, and you all are here, right? That shows that you care. It shows that this stuff matters to you. It shows how much dedication you have to your kids, to your students. And we're going to come out this the other side somehow. And again, we want to preserve the relationships. We want to preserve curiosity. We want people to feel successful in the ways that they can and to enjoy themselves. Look, if this turns into, we're going to do an essay on Star Wars rather than an essay on World War II, okay.
That would be right up my daughter's alley.
Yeah, we're still writing an essay, right? So I'm a big YouTube geek. I don't watch TV anymore. I watch YouTube because I like the content on there. And there's a YouTube show called Nintendo NBC. It's Nintendo's, I think, Black Crisis is what it's called, but it's all about Zelda lore. And it's doing these really deep dives into Zelda and into the history of Zelda, and just going into all the, and the video essays that this creator does are phenomenal. Like, if I was an English teacher seeing this, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this person got it. Like, it could have been a kid who maybe was getting D's in class, but you watch this video and you're like, they know how to make a thesis, they know how to argue their points, they know how to show supportive evidence, and create a good conclusion. This is it. And so again, it's thinking outside the box. If you're wanting to see those essays, maybe it's you ask the kids to make a video essay, on a topic of your choice that is approved, so it's appropriate, right? But then, because if you're just wanting to see, can you make a persuasive argument about something? Well, let's make a persuasive argument about why we think the Gorgons actually were the creators of the old temples. Oh, Doug, you're muted.
Do you see they're asking through the chat a question? You want me to read
I
it?
do not see the chat. Sorry, I have two monitors, and so one of the I had to move one super close from.
You want?
Yeah.
They're asking you, my girls Hannah and Olivia seem to be adjusting a little too well with socializing and gaming. How much is too much? Do we set parameters?
That's a hard one, because it's for those kiddos who have a little bit of a harder time going out to socialize, find that socializing through media is easier. In some ways, like, this is a dream come true. Like, there's a lot of posts going around online of like, introverts are sitting there going, I've trained my whole life for this, I'm ready. I don't have to go out, I don't have to interact with people. Yes. Right? This is great. And so we want them to interact online, we want them to have that time, but there is also a balance, right? I like the idea of, let's take breaks every so often. Like, we can play for an hour or two, but then let's put it away for an hour or two and do something else. You can come back to it later, but we're just going to learn to step away and come back. And so that way we learn to turn it off when we need to. But also, like, we don't necessarily want all the socializing to be on one place, right? So if all the socializing is happening through game chat on a game, right? Pardon me, sorry, dinner's talking back to me. We don't want that to be the only place that they socialize. So it can be like, hey, you can talk with your friends, but how about we set up, I think Netflix has started doing viewing parties. So it's like, why don't you do a viewing party with your friends? Right, and we'll suggest other stuff that they can do where they can engage with their friends in a different way that we find to be helpful and engaging, so that they can connect in those ways. And also, like, play games with your kids, right? Like, if they are engaging in gaming, why not sit down and play games with them? Like, tonight, like, the thing my son is looking forward to is Dad's going to play Halo with him. So they're going to do that as soon as I hang up from this. I'm getting handed the younger kiddos, and they're going to go off into Halo land for the next few hours. And they're also going to probably connect with, sorry, my dog's going nuts out there. They're also going to connect with their friends and other family members who play Halo. And so it's that idea of like, let's share, let's come into the world as well. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, the next question says, my son doesn't have any electronics right now, as we were very concerned about him talking to strangers. How do we encourage socialization when he doesn't have any friends from school or other?
Okay. Well, and so that's where you're going to have to, so this is one of those things of like pros and cons of things. Like, when we completely ban technology and ban that digital platform in our lives, then we don't have that when we kind of need it, right? And so if he doesn't have friends from school, like, I'd just be curious if the school's doing Zoom or doing things like that where the kids are connecting and chatting, and maybe he can get information then. Excuse me. Or is it looking through and emailing the school or emailing different places where he has activities to try and find ways to connect? If there's and it depends on the age of the kid too. Like, if we're talking an 8 or 9 year old, like, obviously we're not saying like, just jump on a Discord server and go talk. But if this is a teenager, like we're looking at, okay, how do we talk about how to go on to digital platforms and communicate in ways that are respectful and kind without giving away too much of our own personal information? How do we build trust in a relationship? You know, how do we foster all of those things? And so it's about scaffolding, it's about teaching. And like one of the hard things is like when we go with a hard no for so long, when we start to let it in, it a lot of the onus now is on us to teach, you know, being a good digital citizen and what that can look like. And so it's hard, but there are resources. You know, again, I would say email the school and try to see what resources the school can recommend for the kids to socialize and get together. Look again at things like what Trinity's doing, where they're having the movies that the kids can all watch together and doing those viewing parties. Look for games that the kid can play online with their friends. You can have a Minecraft realm. So it's a way for them to have a specialized Minecraft server that they can just invite the people that they are friends with to play with. So they can play Minecraft together. There's lots of different ways that people can connect. It's about educating yourself around those different ways though, and then feeling comfortable enough to let the leash a little bit loose. We have other questions?
Hey, Megan, this is Erica.
Hi.
Hey, do you have any insight into sites or anything that can give ideas on how to entertain a child without technology? As far as like activities, I've been Pinterest and all of that, but I didn't know if you had any insight as to activities to keep them busy and moving and things like that during the day.
There's lots of things. So there's lots of different like YouTube channels and things for like kids on the move, like different activities that you can do, exercises, things like that. I think it's mostly just being creative. A lot of it's about kind of just creating your own stuff and figuring out, like, you know, your kid, you know what they like. And so then it's, all right, how do I take what they like and put it into what we're trying to do? Like, my kids, one of them is super duper into Pokemon right now. And so, if we hit a point where they don't want to go on a walk, like I'm opening up my Pokemon Go app again, and we're going to go walk around and find Pokemon because they're into that. That's a special interest. And so we can go explore and find Pokemon and do that. Or if it's, we're into, I'm trying to think, this type of show, right? So maybe like my kids are into an adventure show. I hear it playing outside. So it's maybe one of the things I do is create a little adventure for them to go on in the backyard, and they have to run around and find different clues. And so it's just kind of thinking like, okay, it's about boiling it down basically to the basic parts, right? It's like, what is my goal? Is my goal for them to write? Is my goal for them to go for a walk? Is my goal for them to have some time where they're actually reading a physical book rather than being on a tablet or a computer? Okay, how can I achieve this goal in a way? Like, what are some different tools I have to get them to achieve that goal? And so it's just kind of figuring out those types of things, if that makes sense. And I hope that's helpful.
That is, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, there are about 5 more minutes or so left. So any other questions or?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Good.
I'm sorry, I missed this whole thing. I literally just remembered, like, dang, and so I just jumped on. But hi, Ms. Ennis. So as Ms. Ennis knows, I have a 12th grader. I'm sorry, I missed the whole thing. You probably already covered this, but I'm having an awful time getting him motivated to do his homework, and I really don't know why. I don't know if he just thinks it's not going to count, but I keep telling him that it does. You know.
Yeah. Well, and something we were just talking about a little while ago is working on asking yourself this question of, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? is the amount of effort you're going to have to put into getting him to do his homework going to be worth what is going to come out of it at the cost of your relationship with him?
I don't know. He's supposed to graduate, so it's kind of like, well, do I just let him fail? You know, that's always the big question with an ADHD kid.
It is. Well, and
Don't worry.
The question too, though, then becomes like, is he actually going to fail? Because we're at the very end of the school year, right? And so, like, will he graduate with a 4.0? Probably not. But is he going to fail? Probably not. Right. And so again, like, it's trying to figure out the battles, and then like create it, communicating with the teachers and talking with them, and trying to figure out those things.
Right.
And then like, it's also just, how do we empower the students to be curious themselves and want to do these things themselves? And like for seniors, this is a great trial run for college, right?
Yeah. Which is not going to happen anytime soon either. But yeah.
But it's hard to figure that out, and hard to motivate them. And like, it can be sometimes that they got to fail. Like, I don't want that. I don't think any kids are in danger of that really this year. This is going to be a bizarre year for school for everybody. But again, the bigger thing is to focus on like, how do we learn from failure? How do we be curious? How can we foster curiosity about the world around them? And how can we help them learn to be hardworking in the things that matter to them, that they find rewarding? If we can teach that idea of hardworking, not just hardworking on taxes, right? But like hard work, curiosity, and engagement, like, we're going to create the tools that are needed for success. Now, is that going to be instant results and that person's going to be instantly successful in everything they do? Nope. I am fairly confident I have most of those tools in my tool belt, but I am still not successful at getting my taxes done in a timely manner. I don't know what that's going to take. If someone else figures that out, that'd be great. But like, it's helped me be successful in doing things such as being a psychologist, such as giving talks, such as, presenting information through digital media and understanding these types of things. And so if we can give our students and our kiddos those tools, they're going to do much better in life. And with older kids especially, I'm a big, humongous fan of process comments, where essentially we talk about the problem rather than the problem itself. So with, it turns into a thing of like, okay, you tell me you want to do well in school, yet your behavior is that you're not doing your homework, you're not getting your assignments done, and you're not checking in on your Zoom meetings. So your behavior isn't matching up with what you say. And you tell me you want me to be able to trust you, but you're not following through on what you say. So how do these things work together? Help me understand the disconnect here. How do we reconnect them in a way that makes sense? How do we get ourselves working together in this way that is going to be more helpful? And also talking about like fights and things. I even do this I've got a kindergartner and a preschooler, and they'll start throwing a temper tantrum, and like they start it, how the little kids do the wind up, right? And they get that wind up to the big temper tantrum, and I'll sit there and be like, do you really think crying's going to change mommy's mind? And they're like, so do you really want to cry right now? And then I get the pouty face. Like, do you think the pouty face is going to help? No. It's like, all right, do we need to have the fight, or can you just go do the thing I've asked you to do? And usually there's a stomp or two involved with that, but I'd much rather a stomp or two than a big, humongous fight. And it's not about getting angry or reactive. It's just going, hey, let's engage that brain. Is this going to help right now? You say you want to go to college and do these things. Is your behavior supportive of that in a way that's going to get you there? And so it's really putting, teenagers, they want to be independent, right? They want you to treat them like adults. So let's get, it's like, you say you want the adult responsibility, show it to me. Does that kind of make sense and help a little bit? Okay. I saw a nod, so I'll take it. All right, we've got like a couple minutes left before our hour's up. Did anybody else have any other questions or comments? Bueller, no. All right.
I'll just mention something.
Yeah.
I do feel for you having young children at home. I think that would be even harder than teenagers. My stepdaughters all have young children at home. I don't know how they're doing it.
It's interesting.
Kudos to you. Thanks for talking with us tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for joining. Sorry.
Dr.
Not
Connell,
wolf down pizza before a talk, everybody. This is another life lesson.
Dr. Connell, I would like to thank you so much for when I emailed you, you emailed me right back, and you always do. And I appreciate your partnership with TrinityPrep and just with our families and our students. And this was awesome. I mean, it helped me out a ton, so I appreciate it. And I want to thank too everyone for getting on here. There's Trinity parents and there's also some non-Trinity parents, and just want to thank you all for joining us. We'll continue to do this as long as we're stuck at home. So we'll get the word out with more community talks for y'all, and then more stuff for the students. The one tomorrow, I think, is at 3:30. Is it not, Joanna? She might not be on here anymore, but there's a Zoom party tomorrow for the kids at 3:30. So
Yep.